Hi, beautiful collective. Welcome or welcome back. I hope everybody is having a beautiful day today. I wanted to tune in to the collective to see what messages wants to come through for everybody's highest good. Some key totems that this is your message are bees, circles, like more importantly, like spheres. So you seeing things encased in circles and spheres. Okay. Another message or confirmation that this is for you would be flowers, tigers, butterflies, and I'm also seeing fairies and gnomes in my mind's eye. Okay, so if any of those, now I'm also seeing feathers. So if any of those totems, if you've seen, I want to say at least 3 or more within the last 24 hours. Okay, so 3 or more of those images within the last 24 hours, then this message is for you. We're going to start off first by making sure we clear everybody's field because we do not want any interruptions during this message. So Holy Spirit of the Most High Creator, please imbue your energy onto this collective that is tuning in to clear out any disturbances within the field, any lower vibrational energies, entities, attachments, hexes, curses, voodoo, black magic, whatever the case may be, any of those systems or programs or bounds. I'm seeing like cords being bound around a person. Okay, so any of those cords that are wrapped around this collective, I set the intention that Archangel Michael comes through with his mighty sword to cut through any of those cords, any of those black cords. May they be burned by the Holy Spirit now. Ooh, okay, I just got a woof throughout my body. You may have gotten that too. That means we can continue and start this message. All right, so welcome for everybody who's tuning in. Thank you for being here as always. I appreciate your energy, quite literally. I know that we're doing this together. This is a collective that is constantly bettering themselves. I'm hearing this is a collective that is constantly trying to do good, not only for themselves, but for other people. So if that resonates for you, then again, this message is for you. Wow, we've got strength coming out straight off the top. What's underneath that? Okay. All right. So with strength popping out, okay, this is another indication of how strong you are, of how strong this collective has been, how many times this collective has quite literally gone into the lion's den. Okay, I'm seeing the story of David going into the lion's den, and I'm being asked to quickly remind the collective about that story. So essentially, the reason why they threw David into the lion's den was because David did not agree that their entity that they were worshiping, which was Baal, was a legitimate god. He's like, that is not a god. You guys are fools. Like the things that you are sacrificing this god to, because every day what they would do is they would sacrifice almost like 40 pounds of flour, so much wine, and there was one other thing that they would sacrifice to meat, right? So every day the king at that time would prepare a table for their god Baal, and every night it would be devoured, and they would think like, oh my god, this is this entity coming through, like, yes, we're gonna keep praising him. And David was like, no, you're a fool. That is not being done by a god. Like, your god is not real. Like, your god is not my god, and what's happening is you're being fooled. And so they had David thrown into prison, right? So now the king sets up this little trap. But now before they were even able to throw David away, he very smartly took ashes and put ashes all over the floor around the table which the meal was prepared for their god, right? And the next morning, when the king had found, like, oh my God, look, everything was eaten, David was like, again, laughing at him, like, you're such a fool. Look at the floor. And on the floor, you could see all the footprints of men, women, and children. And so they did an inspection around the table. I'm getting chills. And in the table, there was a trap door where it was the king's court would come in at night, feast off the stuff that was prepared for their god, and then escape And, he would basically pretend that it was actually the god. So essentially, the king, forgave David. But then the king had higher ups, right? So now the higher ups were going after the king, oh, you're siding with the Jews. You can't do that because David was a Jew, right? He was an Israelite. And so they were like, okay, we're going to now throw David into a lion's den. Now, the lions, there were 7 lions in this den, okay? And they would feed these lions a ridiculous amount of food every day, okay? Every day, these lions were used to feasting. But what they did was they stopped feeding these 7 lions for weeks, okay? For weeks. Now, they had thought, well, if we're going to stop feeding these lions and we throw David into the lion's den, then surely he would be devoured. Surely he would be devoured. They haven't eaten in weeks, right? They purposely did this. They plotted and planned, okay? So now David gets put into the lion's den, okay? Now, David's hanging out in the lion's den. He's not being eaten. Day 1 passes, not being eaten. Day 2 passes, not being eaten. Day 3 passes, still not being eaten, right? Now, there's a gentleman who, God, please help me to say his name right. I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. Habakkuk. Okay, there was a gentleman named Habakkuk, okay? And Habakkuk was out in his field, and he had a meal that he was going to deliver to people because he had extra food, he had extra bread and water, and he was going to go give it to somebody in need. But an angel came to Habakkuk and said, I need you to deliver this meal to David in the lion's den in Babylon. And Habakkuk was like, I have no idea where that is. I have no idea where I'm going. I'll do it, but I don't know where the lion's den is. And the angel reminded him, don't you worry, I will lead you by the hairs and the crowns of your head. And so basically, I will lead you through your intuition. You will get feelings within your body of where to go, where to move, and what doors to open. Lo and behold, Habakkuk makes it to the lion's den, okay? And Habakkuk approaches David and says to David, this meal has been prepared for you by the Most High God. He's heard your cry and he's come to deliver food for you. Now, mind you, they haven't fed David, and the lions still haven't eaten him, okay? So now I believe it's on the 7th day, okay? When he receives the food, he praises. Again, don't quote me on the days and the numbers and things like that, okay? I'm just giving you the overall story, and there's a lesson behind this. So he gets the food. David gives thanks to God, and he praises God for not abandoning him. He praises God for being with him and providing for him, right? And for protecting him in the times of his distress. Quite literally, he's sitting in a lion's den with 7 hungry lions, okay? So he's thanking God for still delivering this meal, okay? So now, the king, I believe on the 7th day, comes and sees Daniel just sitting there with the lions. The lions are just chilling with Daniel. I'm sure they may even let him pet him. I'm just adding that in. But I feel at that point, they probably were besties, Anyway, that's a side note. Don't take that. That's just me. Okay, anyway. So the king comes and sees David still alive in the lion's den, and he's like, okay, I now bow down to the God of David, which is Yahuwah, right? A God source, our creator. And the king takes him out of the den, the lion's den. And what does the king do? The king then throws the people who accused David, and put him in there in the first place, and was like, okay, now you go in there. And as soon as they went in there, the lions devoured them instantaneously. The king watched as all of them were devoured in an instant. Okay, what does this tell you? This should tell you a lot. A lot. First and foremost, no plan, plot, or scheme that the enemy has will ever fall against you, for you are protected by the Creator. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. David was a pure example of this. He was quite literally in a lion's den, unscathed, unharmed, okay? With the lions, okay? Again, Cohen, I feel like they were just chilling. I really do. I really feel like, I just have this feeling, okay? Anyway. So now, what else does this tell you in this story? Habakkuk, the gentleman who was going to do good, right? He essentially had it in his heart to do right by others already. He had extra food that he wanted to donate. But what did God do? God led him to the people who actually needed it. So essentially, there are things that like you want to do, right? And that you've been led to do. And maybe you want to do it for certain people that are like in your vicinity, but God is actually leading you out. Okay, God's taking you from where you are and moving you outwards, and trust where he's moving you outwards, because the people of which you're going to be interacting with in this outward experience away from your hometown, okay, so some of you are going to be moving very soon, okay, they are going to be more receptive to receiving the messages that you have, but also receiving you as a whole. Okay. And another thing, what does this tell us? This tell us first and foremost, the story, we're heading back to, David with the king, and the king believing in Baal, and then all of a sudden be like, no, actually I believe in God, your God, the God of the Most High, right? Yahuwah. What does this tell us? This tells us that when we put our energy, when we put our ideologies, when we put our efforts into false programs, whether they're emotional programs, mental programs, right? Those are false idols. Like an idol is something that we look up to. An idol is something that we hold high, right? We approve of these things. So we want to follow in the footsteps of our idols. So to speak, essentially, right? So now if we have an idol that we are holding well up above ourselves, but that idol is actually not in alignment with God, what are we doing? We are still going against God. And if we're allowing ourselves to attach ourselves to these idols, to even public figures, and like claiming that they're going to be the ones that save us from ourselves, we're then taking our power away again and putting them into these figures. And what does that do? You're taking the power away from the God within you and putting them into these figures. Okay? That necessarily doesn't always help you, right? Especially if the idols are doing things behind closed doors that you don't actually agree with, right? How does that look? and I'm sure a lot of you are like, well, I don't know what they're doing behind closed doors, right? But if they're your idol, maybe you should. Maybe you should know what's happening behind closed doors. Maybe you should understand and realize. And if that's the case, who would be an idol then that you should replace that idol from? I don't know, maybe Mother Mary? Mother Mary is a perfect example of a prominent divine female feminine figure who should be an idol for the most divine high feminines, right? And then we have her divine son, Yeshua. I feel like that would be the perfect divine masculine counterpart for what an idol should be. Why? Because Jesus gave his life knowing He knew he was right, but he still forgave anyway. You know what I mean? Like that level of humbleness, that level of reciprocity, but even that level of sanctity within somebody, that is something that we should hold of great higher standards, right? So maybe another question that's also coming through for this collective is, where are you putting your energy? What idols are you allowing your energy to be carried through? Okay, are these idols actually fulfilling the things of your soul, or are they fulfilling your materialist desires? That's an important question as well, right? Because then that also shows you where you're holding your value and where it is that your energy is mostly colliding into. And if we're holding our value mostly in the materialistic sense, right, then we're not able to see full circle the spiritual nature of our existence, the spiritual nature of the God, of Creator within each and every one of us. And that quite literally seriously limits your potential. Ooh. Like it cuts it in half, right? Because you go from this quasi-crystal 8D spiritual energetic system projecting yourself into this 3D reality, but then if you allow yourself to attach to the 3D reality, what happens to everything else that you are a part of? It's like you're letting it go. And then for what? Have you asked yourself, what are you letting these things go for? Are they even worth your time? Are they even worth your energy? Are they worth feeding into? Right? And David, all right, David's coming back into my mind because David did not feed into the fear of being thrown into the lion's den. David did not feed into the humiliation that he went through because he didn't believe in their God Baal. He was like, yo, you guys are foolish. You guys are over here sacrificing people, livestock to a God who's not even doing anything for you. It's quite literally your own people that are taking. Like, what? Ugh, it gives me the ick. It literally gives me the ick. But now think about what David went through standing up for that. He was quite literally jailed, right? Who was another person in the spiritual mindset? John the Baptist. John the Baptist, another one who was baptizing people in the light of God, in the light of Christ, right? And he even said, there is a person who is even greater that will come after me. And he was talking about Jesus. I'm sorry, I'm rubbing my arms because I'm getting full body chills. So I'm trying to calm the energy down because it's, okay? But now John the Baptist, he was jailed as well. But he stood true to his value. And now Peter, Jesus' apostle, Peter was hung upside down. He was crucified upside down. Jesus was crucified upright. Peter, the rock, he was crucified upside down, right? But still, he held true to his value till the very end. He didn't act as Judas did. He didn't sell himself out over fear, over money, right? Judas was all about greed. Because the Pharisees were like, well, if you give Jesus up, you get a little something on the side. You'll be good to go. You'll be set for life. You don't have to worry about following and begging for money in this missionary work. That's what they promised him back, guys. Sound familiar? Does that sound familiar at all in this current day and age? I just want you to make these connections. Because everything is connected. Everything is connected. Okay, So we're going to finish this reading off because this has been a very, very interesting reading. I'm loving all the symbolism that is coming through with David and with the lions, right? So now visualize yourself as David in this very moment in time. What situations can you describe yourself being in as that of a lion's den? And as you are in this lion's den, okay, what belief systems are you still holding against yourself and also God in regards to helping you to be pulled out of this lion's den? When you start to unravel those questions within yourself, you then start to unravel and unpack the energetic blocks, the emotional blocks, the physical blocks, right? Because everything is connected, everything follows together. So allow yourself today to go deeper into the lion's den within you, okay? Where is it that people are still questioning you, right? And David was questioned. He's like, the king was like, how could you believe in your God? And he's like, I just know, and I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you, right? So are there any situations in your life that you are currently trying to prove to people also? Or is there anything that you can surrender to God in this day and age that he can quite literally take off your hands? I think that would be an important way to continue throughout the day today for this collective. I also think that allowing yourself to continue into this insight will bring, again, even more insight into you. So take this, use this. I love you. And I'm being told we're going to end it here. So if you guys enjoyed this reading, thank you for being here so much. This was so much fun. I was not expecting the story of David to come through. Again, it holds so much weight, right? It holds so much weight to life and the situations that we encounter, not only on a physical nature, but also emotionally, right? Our emotions can act as a lion's den. Emotions of depression, emotions of fear, emotion of anxiety and angst. Those can be lion's dens for us, right? Thought patterns specifically. Hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. That is a lion's den. You're preparing for the worst through the law of preparation, my friends, okay? Trust and know the law of preparation. Whatever it is that you prepare for, you're preparing your energy field for. So if that program is something that you have been holding on to, free yourself from that lion's den today, okay? Anything else? Drink a lot of water. Get out in the sun. The sun is very healing. Ground. Be in nature. Nature speaks to you. God speaks to you through nature. Remember, animals are essentially emotional forms of us. So be kind to animals because they matter, okay? Even the littlest ones. All right. I'm going to end it here. Okay. I love